Today we are talking about Razor's Edge, about this move to WebView. Stacey, I'll call on you first. When people say Razor's Edge, what do they mean? It's a little bit more complicated than just like one product, right?
Yep. So we used to think of all that stuff on the left side that looks like it was built in the 90s, because it was, as Razor's Edge, and now there's a whole ecosystem of ways you can look at Razor's Edge, either Database View the old way or WebView the new way.
And WebView, when it came out, for all of us that were around, yeah, and we'll just be candid here today, right? So we'll be very open to this. So when WebView came out, I think the impression on all of us, and certainly sold by Blackbaud, was, hey, everything's moving to the web. This is going to be cloud-based. And they talked a lot about it in those days. And then it kind of felt like 7 years, 10 years went by. We stopped hearing about it going to the web, and we lived in this world really with a foot in both, right? So database view is where you're processing GIFs and doing all the power stuff. WebView, when it started and stayed and got stagnant for years, was really kind of a front-end fundraiser tool. Is that fair?
Yep, that's exactly what it was. It was kind of a simplified, easier to look at version that felt like it was designed for front-end fundraisers to be able to see their people in Razor's Edge without having to see all of the million administrative tasks.
But not yet replacing database view. So, and I say that because we've had a lot of clients, I've had CFOs call and say, hey, I heard what you're saying, but like, I can't believe it. Our database person is still in this wonky database view. I tell her to go to WebView, and I'm like, don't, like, you're wrong. Like, she is right to be doing what she's doing in database view. Okay, but what is changing, right, is this. So Blackbaud is officially moving in the direction to go to what they're calling, am I saying it right, Austen? What do they call it?
They're calling it the Total Web Solution.
TWS, we got a new acronym, Total Web Solution. So at some point, database view is going to be retired. They're going to go totally on the web, cloud-based, the way you would expect software in the year 2024, 2025 now. But it's not there yet. We do know that it's happening, right? So the reason we're holding these webinars is it really is happening. And we've heard this for almost a decade now. The truth is it really is happening. They went and they did FE first. They've got it mostly there. They have resources. We know that. We are very closely in contact with Blackbaud. We know there's resources. There's a plan in place. They are going to the web. So this isn't something you can just dismiss anymore. It's really happening. Why does this make people so nervous? It makes people nervous because I'll just use a cartoon analogy here, right? We've got Blackbaud, we've got you on this call. It makes people nervous because we've been here before, right? We've heard this. We've heard that everything's going to the web. Even when WebView first came out, it was going to be this end-all be-all solution, and it wasn't, right? It was like a better, nicer way to look at lists and queries and some new functionality, but it doesn't really speak all that well with database view. Things weren't in sync all the time. It was just, so everybody's skeptical, right? And I think Blackbaud would be honest and own up to that. What people are worried about is that it's going to be half-baked, right? Austen, is that fair? Like, that's the big concern, that they're going to get pushed off a database view. WebView's not ready. Is that right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of concerns that what's being built out in WebView won't solve for all the processes that people rely on in database view.
Yes, because there's a lot, right?
Been burned, right? So yeah,
yes.
we're bringing some trauma forward into our assessment.
Let's swim in the trauma for a little bit. So I mean, that feeling, many of the folks on this call are really, really good at what they do, right? Database, you've been in database view, you know what you're doing, you're the only one that understands it, your organization, and now you hear that the software that as clunky as it is, you've learned how to master, it's going to be going to a new way, and you're probably going to lose some functionality and all of that. It's understandable to be terrified and to be concerned by that. We don't want it to be half-baked. We want it to be fully baked. So what we're doing, we PSG, is riding along as we go here and just being that voice of reason to the folks who are curious about, is it ready? What's not ready? What do I look forward to? What are the things that I need to yell and scream about to make sure it is ready? Like, that's what we're doing here. Quickly, as we get into queries, that's the topic today, I just want to share, not because we need to walk through it, but Austen, this is all public, right? Like Razor's Edge Blackbaud has laid out a timeline for when they're moving, correct?
Correct. So these next few slides are all from the product update briefing in November. There will be another product update briefing, I'm guessing, in like April, May. So keep an eye out for that. And anything you see within these slides that you have a question about that are very obviously screenshots, go watch the pub, right? So all of these sort of things, they go into tremendous detail about the timing and what each of these little flags includes and what the colors mean and all that sort of great stuff.
Awesome. Okay. So it's happening. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to explain a little bit more and tee us up with some housekeeping stuff, and then I'll let Stacey share her screen. We did a big webinar on this, I think in November, just kind of introducing the idea. And then we asked everybody, we said, hey, what would be the most helpful to you as you plot this move from database to WebView? And I'll share the answers later on in the presentation. But the number one thing, one of the top things, I think it was number 2, was this session today. How do we run queries in WebView? What does that look like? So that's what we're tackling today. We have a whole bunch more stuff coming down the pipe, and we'll give you links to all of that. But today we're just going to talk, Stacey, about queries, right? And we're going to do this live, which is terrifying. So fingers crossed, everybody. If you could all stop using the internet while Stacey shares her screen, we should be okay to run with this. And Stacey, sorry, one more thing before you get started. You all will have questions. Do not put the questions in the chat if you really want it answered. If you want your question answered, hit the Q&A button and put it there, because that's where we get it and we'll answer it. As you've seen already, when you put something in the chat, within 5 seconds, it's going to disappear because everybody's talking. So if you have a legitimate question or an illegitimate question, put it in the Q&A. It'll pop up on our screen. We'll make sure to get it tackled for you. Okay.
Awesome. All right. So y'all have probably seen this. You can see my Razor's Edge right now, I assume, right? If not, please let me know. So this is what it's looked like for years and years and years. We all know this really, really well. The title of this webinar is side by side, but we're done looking at this. You all know what it looks like. We're going to go look at the new way. My screen isn't that big. We also have heard in the chat that people have new navigation today. We've had this for a couple of days in our sandbox, and I really dig it. I think you're going to get used to it and like it. I think it's better than old navigation in WebView. So sorry, it's changing. You'll have to get used to this because the old way is gone. So query exists down here. It's now in a heading called analysis, and it's right here. So let's go check it out. So this is the new query page. We do not, you'll notice, have a folder tree. So I know some of you are very used to using those folders. I personally don't pay attention to them myself, so I didn't miss it when I got here. If you need to find your folders, they're now right here. Categories, you can switch to general or data cleanup or whatever your categories are. They're right there. And there's also these cool filters and search functions where you can search by name or by date up here, which is super useful. So I think this is going to be helpful for finding queries. Love that. There are some new options on this screen that I want to make sure everybody knows about because they're cool. So, this one is something I don't have access to edit. So when you click on this little menu, you get edit or edit in new tab. I'm going to always use edit in new tab, right? Because if you just choose edit, it's going to take over the screen and you'll lose access to all of this stuff and everything, right? So typically when you're opening something, I would do edit in new tab. That is the way you can open multiple things in Razor's Edge WebView, right? We used to have 3 constituents open so you could put them side by side. Now you have to open them in 3 new tabs and then put those tiles side by side. So that's how you do it now. So edit in new tab is there. Export, you can do that from here, which is cool. We're going to talk more about exporting from query later, but you can export it without having to stop your work. So I can click this export button and it will export in the background and tell me when it's done, which is super cool. So I don't have to sit here and wait for it to export. And the other fun thing that exists here is add to favorites. So you can add to your favorite queries that live on the home page, and they also will star it over here, and that's one of your filters. So that's what's right here. So let's start though. We're going to go ahead and make a new query today so you can see what the inside of this looks like. So I'll click new query. One interesting thing about this is that most of your choices in WebView query are sticky, right? In database view, this popped up and the default was always constituent dynamic. But if you create a lot of GIF static queries, like apparently I do, this is the last one I chose. So this is what's here now. The other thing that's interesting, I've seen some comments about keyboard shortcuts, totally with you there. I also miss Control L and all the things that I used to automatically type in Razor's Edge. So you just have to tab to the field that you want to change, and then you can use your keyboard to type these options. So I'm typing a C for constituent and nothing's happening, but it worked for dynamic. So I'll just do the drop down and select it, and we'll do a dynamic constituent query today. First thing we notice here, there is no file menu, right? So in old school, all the programs in the 90s had a file menu up at the top where you could do things like export and save as and whatever. None of that is up there anymore. There's some buttons down here and there's an options tab. So those are the places to look for things if you're looking for something that used to be in a menu. We'll talk more about some of those options as we go through. Let me get to my notes so I don't forget anything. Okay, so let's build a query. So for today, we have a fake scenario, which is that the president of my organization is having an event for platinum members of our giving society and also a few of his friends. And he wants to know has given to the library fund. So we're going to use a query today to gather all those people together and see their library fund giving. So first we're going to do our Platinum Giving Society, and that is, we store that in an attribute in our database. This was one of the things that took me a while to find when I was first looking at WebView query, because everything in WebView has the WebView name. So it's down here. It is now called custom fields. If you ever heard the word attribute and call them custom fields now, that's where they are.
Hold on, Stacey, can we plug in a little bit later, before the end of the hour, we have a whole cheat sheet for you. So that example right there of something that used to be called something database view is now called something totally different. We've written it all out for you so that we have a cheat sheet for you on that topic. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great. I am excited about that cheat sheet. It's the kind of thing that I will be sticking to the wall in front of my computer for when I forget. Why can't I find solicitor? Oh yeah, it's fundraiser now. Okay, so 2025 Giving Circles description, we're going to select the Platinum members. So this query should now find all Platinum members of my Giving Circles. And the other thing that we want to show you is this little nonsense spreadsheet that the president sent me with notes that he has. And he said, I want to make sure these people are all included in this event, and I want to know about their library giving too. So I have this nonsense spreadsheet, but thankfully it does have Razor's Edge IDs. So if you don't know about this trick, prepare for your life to be changed. This is probably one of the single most useful things in query. You have some silly spreadsheet that there's nothing tying these people together in Razor's Edge, and you need them in a query. So you can do a one of query, which we will show you in a second. So I'm going to just select this and copy it. And we're going to go to my favorites, and I'm going to say constituent ID, choose the one of operator. I'm going to put my cursor here, and I'm going to do Control V to paste, and it has pasted all of those IDs here. In database view, you can do this, but it only takes 500 at a time. This web view now takes 2,000 at a time, which I think everybody's very excited about, because yes, some of us have copied and pasted thousands of IDs into a query before to get them in the same place. It's silly, but it works. So, so now we have our constituent giving circle equals platinum, or we have these random people that we also want included in our list, and we need to make sure and change this to an or. So those things, I don't even remember exactly what this looked like in database view. Oh, it was a button down here, right? You selected the line and then you clicked the button. So now that's right here. We're going to change this to or. Quick note on favorites. Your favorites are now in alphabetical order. I'm sorry. I know that some of you have a very specific order that you like your favorites, because when you do a certain kind of query, you just go through and click them in the order that you want them to show up in the output or whatever it is. And they're now in alphabetical order. Sorry, you'll have to deal. Let's see. The other thing that's slick about this is that you just click these once and they pop over. So it's not, it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit quicker. It's definitely fewer clicks to build a query in the new version. The only other thing I wanted to mention while I'm on this criteria tab is that we do not have that find button anymore. There used to be a button with binoculars down here where you could click find and then type in the name of a field if there was something that you couldn't remember what it's called or which of these millions of nodes it's in. That is gone. So if you need that, you can use your browser's Control F to search for something, but it will not find things that are collapsed. So you'll have to, you know, at least be able to get close to it, and then you can use your Control F to find things. So I have no idea if anything like that is planned, but if that's something you use heavily, you'll have to complain to Blackbaud about that one.
And on that note, we also will plug how to complain to Blackbaud and where to go. We'll talk through all that, but we got to get through the query stuff first, and we'll handle everybody's burning questions.
All right. So let's look at the output tab. I want to put some things in this query so that I can run it and see who's showing up and get answers to some of my questions right here on this screen. So we are going to add some of my favorites. Constituent ID, always, 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 if you're outputting something in a query, put the constituent ID. So in a pinch, you can do that one of thing, right? So don't just do a bunch of names. So we'll do constituent ID name, let's do spouse name, and I want a bunch of stuff in here because I want it to fill up the screen. So we're going to put in a bunch of address fields for fun. Cool things on this screen that you can now do. You can use the menu to edit the column heading, which I love, right? Oh, I was going to add this guy because I want to edit this because it's crazy long, right? Nobody needs this. Let's see. So that's going to be way better. And the other thing you can do here that's amazing is you can reorder fields without having to go right click, move up, right click, move up, right click, move up 16 times. So I love that. I also want to add a summary field here because the president has asked me how much these people, or if these people have given to the library. So we're going to do a summary. Love summaries in query. They're fun, but a little on the confusing side. So we're going to look at these a little bit. So I want to know total amount of gifts. And do I wish to apply applicable criteria? Yes, I do. And we're going to give this a minute to load. This will take some time. I think people have noticed that most of all running queries in WebView tends to be a little bit faster than in database view, but sometimes it is not. And there's some things that take a bit to load. So I want just gifts to library. So we're going to do fund description equals library. Notes about this box and campaigns, funds, and appeals. You can only search by description, so the name of the fund. So if I tried to search by SQ450, it would probably not find it. You also have to know what it is, right? Because there's not a just show me all of them button here on equals. If you select one of or some of the other ones, I think there is a button that you can get to them. So we'll look at that on a different field. The other problem with campaigns, funds, and appeals currently is that you cannot select or type in or find inactive campaigns, funds, and appeals in query currently. This, I suspect, will be fixed because that seems not sustainable in the long term, but currently they're not in there. Okay, what else did I want to do? Oh, gift type here. I want to know about pledges and existing gifts. So I want to include a bunch of gift types. So we're going to do one of. If I click here, I can get this show all. I could start typing and select them all myself, but I could also go to show all and then I have a whole list. And we're going to select all, and then I'm going to uncheck all the things that have payment in them. So let's search for pay, and then I can uncheck all the payments because I just want to know about pledges and kind of one-time gifts. There's also some other options in here that none of us actually know what they are because we haven't played with them yet. So GL reversal and amendment now exist in this list. I don't know really why, and actually we should probably switch these two, right? For one-time gifts. You all have your rules about how you do this. You know which gift types you want to select. Okay, so now we're going to do what we're working on here is outputting a summary field that shows these gift types to the library restoration fund, and we're going to say okay. And I am going to change the column heading on this to library gifts and pledges, and I'm going to move that up. All right, checking notes. All right, let's go to the sort tab. So this also is the same as ever. We're going to sort by the total amount of gifts, and something kind of weird happens, which is why I wanted to show you this. It's going to pop up the summary field criteria box here. I don't think I need it here. I just want it to output it and I don't want to change anything. So I'm going to say okay, but it confused me the first time it happened. So if this happens to you, if you try to sort by a summary field, when it pops up like this, it's a little strange. So just say okay. I want the summary field as it was before. I do want to sort this descending, so that's right here in my little menu box. And as before, we had this little guy, so you can drop it down and see what it is. All right, let's talk about the options tab. So this is cool. This is where your save options exist, and all of this stuff you'll recognize from old file menu stuff that was kind of buried in database view. I love that this is now front and center. One important thing that I was telling someone yesterday, I didn't even know any of this existed until I've been using Razor's Edge for over a year. Very embarrassing, but it happens to the best of us. So gift processing, if you have soft credits in your system, you want the query to, my most common selection is soft credit gifts to both, so use amount and grid. So what happens here is if you have donor selected, it will only consider the person if they have hard credits. If you have recipient selected, it will only consider people with soft credits for certain gifts. And if you have both, it will consider both the donor and the soft credit recipient. So I like to use both for this. Other things on this page, all the advanced processing things with SQL and select from queries. For those of you using the API, this copy query JSON is super slick, and you can basically copy this and paste this query criteria into the API to run queries on an ad hoc basis in Power Automate. So love that. Checking anything else on here? Oh, let's go ahead and save this. We'll save it. Save button pops up. The category is working right now. Sometimes when you go to save a query, there is nothing in this category dropdown. So if you encounter that, go ahead and open a case.
That's our update for today. Sometimes in WebView, you'll click on menus and nothing will be there. So just keep rolling.
So my official favorite feature in new WebView query is this little guy right here, copy link. So I have copied a link to the query and I am now going to email this to somebody. So in my organization, I can just paste this into Teams. I can paste it into an email. I can send it to whoever I want. And she can now go directly to this query without me having to say, it's in the general folder and it's called this long annoying name, right? So it's so easy to share queries and query results with people. So two thumbs up to Blackbaud for that one.
That's incredible, sharing the query. I think the larger question everybody has is, are you using the new Outlook? Is that what I saw there?
I am using the new Outlook and I really like it.
We're going to have to, all right, I'm not going to go any farther. We'll tackle that in a future webinar. Continue.
All right, so we have now saved our query and shared it. Let's look at the results. Let's see what it does. So this should hopefully not take too long because we don't have very many results in this query. It looks like we have 14 people that are either members of our Platinum Giving Society or are on that list from our president. And here's the things to note. So as before, if you click on a record, I think in database view, you double click on it. Here, you just single click and it opens up this little guy that shows you the full record in this little box. You can't move this or resize it or anything, so there's some tricks. But if you're like me and like to, look through this and see who lives in whatever state or likes to scroll through these records and fix things, you just do your normal stuff where you rearrange tiles here and then this will stay on top, right? So I can look at Graham's information and then when I go to my next record, it'll have that same tile on top. So you know how you used to be able to select a default tab for the record to open to, that's how you do that here. The other thing that you can do, which I think is cool, is if you want to open the record in a new tab, you hold your control key down and click on the row and it'll open the record up in a whole other page, right? So this is how if you wanted to look at multiples at once, you would open these tabs up and then arrange them on your screen so you can see them all. I love that the row numbers are included by default because I always had to go in and find those in database view and it's kind of buried and I could never remember where it was. So anyway, I love that that's there. Name is formatted last, first, middle, and I don't think you could change this. So I think if you're using the name field in a way that requires a specific format, you'll have to probably create an address of your citation or something. So just things to keep aware of. There's just a little some strange things there. So we have so many columns that we can't see the end of it, right? So there's a couple of things we can do. We have this scroll bar up here. You can also use the scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom. Or you can zoom your browser with your menu up here, but you can do hold your control key down and then scroll your mouse button, your mouse wheel, and it'll make everything smaller. Now, this will also make everything in your browser smaller, right? This is your browser scroll. So if you do that and you don't like it, then you have to remember to scroll it back up to normal size. But that's how you can see all of that if you have lots of columns. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about, we're ready to talk about exporting from query. So I do not need to export this, right? Because I sent a link to this query to my coworker who wants to see it. But if you do like to export, you need to use extreme caution when exporting out of query. So here's my little button to export it. And actually, I do want to show you how it works because it is so much easier than exporting queries in database view. I'm going to press this button. It's going to run and think about it for a second. And it is going to download a CSV right here with the query name in the title, and it's done. It takes about 1 second. It's amazing. So I love that. However, I also want to make sure that you are aware that exporting out of query is dangerous. So in your Razor's Edge Essentials training, you should have learned that query is a grouping tool. Query is not a reporting tool. So we have reason to believe that query will be the new export someday. So this advice may change and there may be some rules that go along with that. But for example, let's just put in the constituent code into our output. For those playing along at home, what's going to happen is, where is my constituent code? Oh, I had it in my favorites. There it is. What's going to happen is we're going to get a whole bunch more rows in here, right? Graham's going to have 3 or 4 rows because he has a bunch of constituent code. So if I export this and then I try to send a letter, right, I'll get 3 letters for Graham and I don't want to do that. So you need to use extreme caution when you are exporting out of query, especially for things like mailing lists or financial reporting, because they are not designed to give you 1 row per gift or 1 row per constituent. It's designed to give you 1 row per query criteria. So please, please, please be careful. We still recommend creating queries, but then going to database view and using the export function for those things, for financial reporting and mailing lists. And really for financial reporting, you should use gift detail and summary and those kinds of things too. So, all right. I think that is the end of my demonstration. I feel like I talked fast. I hope I said everything that I was supposed to say.
Stacey, we only have 50 questions lined up for you.
Great.
I'm going to lean on Austen. So let's do a couple things. Austen, I want your help, and Stacey, as she looks through this, focus on the questions that are probably most applicable, right? So we have tons of random one-off ones, which we will get to, right? But first, let's just start with the big ones. Austen, if you don't mind, what are a couple of questions in there that we can have? Stacey, keep your screen on because people are asking where stuff's at and everything else. But Austen, do you mind kind of leading us through this, and then I'll look through as well?
Sure. So we've got one question here from Laura. How much longer will database view query remain? And that's really unknown, but I think you should operate under the assumption that in a couple months they might turn this off, right? So we learned from past precedent with tables that once they got tables up and running in WebView, a couple months later, they turned it off in database view. So go ahead, pull both screens open now, right? Have database view on one side, WebView on the other, try things out, figure out what's different, what works, what doesn't, add ideas to the idea bank, right? But just plan for this not sticking around forever.
And on that, I mean, Stacey, tell me if this is accurate. There's things that are missing, right? So that's why we're doing this. It's not, and Blackbaud is moving things to WebView. It's not 100% parity yet. They don't say that it is. But with that said, there's stuff that's better in WebView. Am I hearing you correctly? Like there's reason. It's not just, hey, eat your vegetables, but there's actually things that are easier in WebView. Is that right?
Yep, I've used that copy link button so many times in the past couple of weeks, and the exporting is so easy. There's so many just really great things that I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Austen, do you have other ones that you want to tackle first, or do you want me to just start lightning rounding this?
There was lots of questions about that JSON button.
Yeah.
API and what does that mean, and does this replace Q, and all the questions, and the answer is not exactly, but you can use the JSON button to get this, which is code that goes directly into the query API. So if you're building stuff out in Power Automate, you can run a query that does not exist in the database directly from Power Automate and then dynamically use the output in some way, right? So this solves for some hiccups we had around the list actions not having enough filters or not returning exactly what we needed to see. So that's a great way to use that. In terms of queue, you could use this scheduling feature in Power Automate to run a query on a recurring basis, do something with that, save that to a file in SharePoint, what have you. But it is not a one-to-one replacement of Q as Q currently stands.
And there's a bunch of questions that came out. We were talking about database view going away and query and stuff. It is not happening tomorrow. You should plan on it going away. It will go away. They are not going to pull the rug before the function is there. I guess I can't say that for certain. It's possible Blackbaud pulls the rug on something before it's fully baked, but anything like people kind of freaked out a little bit there about like if query goes away from database view, how do we get queries and export? Stacey, I don't know if you want to comment on that or if I just tackled it.
And I think that's it. I think that it will mostly be there. We do have a few things we'll talk about here at the end about things that they're not planning to replicate and recreate, but I think we can trust them to not make our lives miserable.
Okay, let's do a speed round and then I'll share my screen and go over some stuff that's not in there, and then we'll share that link to the cheat sheet and we'll talk about some other stuff. But stick around, folks. We're going to go through all your questions here. All right. Any idea what's going to happen to query lists when the database view goes the way of the dinosaurs?
Yes, it will be dead forever. So this is one of the things. If you feel very, very strongly about query lists, you need to go to the idea bank. We'll give you a link to that later, or maybe somebody's already put it in the chat. Go to the idea bank and vote for it. They are not planning to do query lists. You could probably do some of the query list functions that you're doing with a combination of lists and queries, and they'll be expanding where you can use query in WebView, so that hopefully may take the place of some of those things too, but sorry, it's on the chopping block currently.
Austen, question for you. So my query in WebView, this is from Mercedes, still shows preview, and I know yours does too. Any thoughts on when that might change, or will it change?
I presume that when they feel that query has gotten to a good point and probably doesn't have some of the bugs we're experiencing right now anymore, I imagine that they will take that preview designation off and that might be around the same time that they turn it off in database view.
Stacey, can you use SQL in query?
There is all of this stuff. I don't know. I've never used it.
So the answer is, in theory, yes. It's definitely why one of the reasons they're moving to WebView, right? Kevin asked, did they get rid of the janky scroll requirement for the one-offs in WebView?
For the one of thing, yes,
Yeah.
yes. You do not have to scroll to the bottom of the list and paste in the bottom row anymore. No, you just paste it in the top one.
See, little quality of life issues. Embrace WebView. There are some things that are better. Sandy asks, are we able to add custom fields, aka attributes, to favorites?
I believe so. Let's try it.
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
Not yet.
I will say that all these great ideas that people have, and we say, oh, that's not possible. Go to the idea bank and add an idea. Post it to the Facebook group. Go petitions and votes.
Austen, do you mind dropping the link to Idea Bank just for folks that may not know what you're talking about it? All right, scanning through here as well. Do you know if they've added the ability to query by head of household as opposed to using export to only export by head of household?
That is a great question. I don't think so. I think the options in here are the same as before. I'm just scanning real quick.
Thank you, Sunshine, for dropping that link, by the way.
I do not believe so. I think you still have to do the thing where you go to the relationship and you have to do what individuals is spouse, and it's in here somewhere, but you have to do is house and is spouse and is head of household. So it's the same as it was. So you can't find me the heads of household.
Allison says, I must have missed this. You can't pull on attributes.
You can. They're now custom fields.
Yeah, it's the name change. It took me like 5 minutes to find it the first time I was in WebView query. There are some name changes that are going to be detrimental to finding some things.
Yep, it's all down here.
Let's do 3 more minutes of questions, and we'll do some more summaries on stuff that's not moving, then we'll take more questions. Austin, I'll ask you this. Ryan asks, is it better now with more complex, i.e., can we nest things with brackets and have multiple ands? Like, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so you can still use the same front end parentheses. You can use lots of conditional logic within a query. Pretty much anything you can do within database views query, you can do here.
You cannot nest parentheses, sadly. So you still only get one set of parentheses at a time. You could have sequential ones, but you can't nest them. Sorry. I know, I would love that.
There was another great question that I wanted to make sure we referenced, which is what's the difference between WebView lists and now WebView query, right? So lists will still continue to be that easy place you go to answer a simple question, right? What are the number of donors in a 50-mile radius of Philadelphia, right? That are in Joe Smith's portfolio, right? Those very simple, want to see it on a map, easy things to solve. Complex things will still be in query. So just think of query as being relocated. It's just in the same view. You can get back and forth between list and query much easier now. You just open it to a new tab. But I think lists are probably here to stay.
Well said. I'm losing all the questions. I keep scanning down and getting distracted here. Somebody asked about fund IDs. Can you copy and paste on fund IDs? I forget what the question was. Did you catch that, Austen?
Yeah, so that's the same logic as in database view, which is you cannot do the same constituent ID paste 2000 things. Fund IDs you have to look up.
Got it. All right. So for the idea bank, Rachel says, Stacey, it used to be that her criteria choices were automatically carried over into the output. Is there a button for that? Is that still the case?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's a button for that. I have not seen it. Let's see if there's something over here.
I think you can use query fields, can't you?
Yeah, you can go in here and select them and click them and they'll pop over there. But I don't think there is an option for that. I have seen it. If anyone else has seen it, throw it in the chat for us.
Last one, then I'll share a screen here, and then we'll come back to them. Is there a way to change the output of name format to be first, comma, last instead of last, comma, first?
There is not. There are no options for this, so you have to just take it as they give it to you. And there's not anywhere in the settings in WebView or anything, I don't think that you can change that. And I could be wrong on that too, but let me know.
I lied. One more before I share my screen. If you're sending someone a link, Stacey, and then you make edits to that query that you sent, will the link still work or does it break? Do we know that answer?
I have not tested it. I suspect it will send them to whatever is the current version of the query. So if you make a change and save the query and then they go in later with the same link, I suspect it will show them the new, the version that you last saved. That is my my suspicion. If anybody's tested that, let us know.
Lots of questions about merging queries. I don't know what that is.
Let's talk about merging queries. So merged queries in WebView does not work today. It is supposed to work. We talked to somebody at Blackbaud yesterday who said it is supposed to be working. It does not work. So you have your button where you can select your queries and select your operators. Sadly, if you click on this, it does not just show you the pictures. You click on this and then you can click on this guy to see the pictures of what the merge operators do, right? Because I need those every time so that I'm sure I'm doing it right. So it's out here and you sort of can do it, but it won't work. So if you are trying to merge a query and run into an error message while we're on this topic, please create a case with support, because obviously that was a bug. Merge queries are supposed to work. So make sure you create a case if you are working in query and something doesn't work as it's supposed to, so that it brings visibility to the issue and so that Blackbaud is aware that people are trying to use a feature that is not working. So, and merge queries are not showing up in my WebView queries today. Like my old merge queries from database views aren't showing up, and all my other regular queries are. So there's something going on there.
Okay. Is my screen showing okay?
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk through, and then we're going to keep the questions coming. We'll stick around as long as you guys need us to, but I want to make sure we get the important stuff on the recording here in the hour that we promised. Bugs that need to be fixed, we might have covered some of these. Look at that. You can't merge queries in WebView. We've got that straight from the source. They're working on it. Stacey, what else do we need to cover here?
We talked about inactive campaigns, funds, and appeals. I suspect that will be fixed again because I just don't think I think that there will be a mutiny, right? You can't select inactive constituents in that specific record field, which I think there's an idea out there in the idea bank for that, because I think that probably also needs to be fixed. And then the category thing we talked about, there's a bunch of times when we're trying to save a query and the category list is empty. So a few little weird things out there that I suspect are in progress.
Tell me what is not moving to WebView.
So there's some fields that are not going to be moving to WebView at all. So VBA fields, median mode, and consecutive year givings in summaries actually shows up in WebView query, but if you put it into a query, the query will not run. So those are not working. Net community fields are going to be toast. So if you have any queries with those fields, they'll be brought over just like all your other queries, but they won't work.
So you can admire them, but you can't use them.
Exactly. And I think Carlene actually has an idea out in the idea bank with lots of votes already for that consecutive year one, because I know a lot of you use that. So go vote for it if you want it. Other things not planned to be moved per Blackbaud: query lists, query control reports, and giving score queries. So if these are things that you use heavily, again, go to the idea bank or start figuring out new ways to do things.
Yep. That's what everybody loves to hear. They come to this to be told, like even that, I was dying when we even shared the navigation. There's like 5 or 6 people that are like, I hate it. This is the worst day of my life. Like, I know, but save your outrage for the things that like legit we got to vote on and make sure that we get them in there. Some things are going to have to tweak a little bit. Things to look forward to. Stacey Cope.
Yeah. So in Blackbaud's email last week, or there was a blog post last week about this, they're going to start to include queries in other parts of WebView and I'm very excited about this. So email marketing, you can use a query for a list eventually, and dashboards. You could say, just show me people in X query for this dashboard, which I think is going to be super useful. So keep your eyes open for that. We talked a tiny bit about exporting. So based on what Blackbaud sent out last week, we think that some version of query will be the new export, right? So address processing is going to be put into query, and the flattened query results, right, with 1 row per constituent or gift or whatever, will probably eventually replace what we now know as export and will be part of query. So keep your eyes peeled for that too. We'll probably all have a lot to learn about that. And bulk query deletion, of course, is useful unless you're me and you're a hoarder of queries and you've never deleted a query in your life.
I think this would be a good time to talk about inbox zero, Stacey. What is flattened query?
So flattened query results is going to be the thing where it gives you 1 row per constituent or gift rather than the multiple rows, if they have different addresses or different constituent codes or whatever.
That'll be